Hey everyone, and welcome to another Future Design Forum 10-minute Q&A fireside session hosted by myself, Andy Smith, the TDA Creative, the UX Product and Tech Talent Agency. I'm delighted today to be joined by Nicole Cadoret, who is currently the Chief Design Officer at Jabra here in New York. Nicole, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to speak with you today.
And I must be honest, I'm always enthused by all of these conversations, but today's one I'm particularly excited by. Jabra Hearing create hearing aids, and working in design at that intersection of product, of modern technology, and also something that's very mission driven is, I think, a challenge and opportunity that most people would really desire. And there's also the aspect of hearing aids and perhaps the stigma created around them. No one's embarrassed or worried about wearing designer sunglasses for their eyesight, but hearing still has a stigma. So there's many challenges there to overcome. So looking forward to hearing your thoughts around that. Let's start off. Tell us a bit about your journey and how you came to be Chief Design Officer at Jabra Hearing, please.
You bet. Fantastic. Thanks again. So I was trained as a visual designer, and I've been working exclusively in tech for more than 20 years. I started in tech so long ago that when I first moved to New York City, a friend of mine was working at Y&R, a big advertising agency, and she said, "Why don't you come down to Y&R? We're making websites." And I said, "But I don't know anything about the web." And she was like, "Oh, honey, nobody does." And it was this the wild, wild west. It was very early days
I remember it.
in the 90s of working on the web, and I loved it. I loved the narrative aspect to it. I loved the technology, and things were changing and you were learning all the time. And so I spent the first probably 10 years of my career really working at agencies and working at consultancies for large consumer brands like NBC and Sony and Comcast, Dow Jones, working on really just kind of traditional projects, whether they were campaigns or websites. What I found was I would design or solve these problems, and then 3 to 6 months later, it would come out and things would be different. And I wondered why, right? I gave you this thing and now it's come out differently. And what I found is I wasn't able to kind of own the problem, to really understand the scope of the problem. And so I fell in love with startups. So I had the first startup I joined was a company called Quidsi, which was the parent company of diapers.com, soap.com. So I started out as the first UX designer and then built that team to launch 10 brands. And we were acquired by Amazon, which was super, super exciting.
Yeah.
We learned a lot, and I stayed for another 3 years. But when I joined Quidsi, the mission was to be mom's best friend. And I, at the time, was a brand new mom, and I loved it. And I felt that the company was really connected with the mission. You'd often hear people say, like, "Mom doesn't care about that. What are we doing for mom? Mom needs this." And it really was, the mission was unifying. It really helped people make business decisions. And it was like culturally very unifying. And so once we became an Amazon subsidiary, the mission changed to become Amazon's wingman. And when you go from a mission like being mom's best friend to Amazon's wingman, and your job is really primarily the customer experience and really leading for the customer, you can see the customer's getting a little bit lost there.
Sure.
And
Okay.
starting to look for other opportunities. And so I jumped from one startup to another, some that were wildly successful, like Quidsi, and others that were going out of business the whole time I was there, which were also delightful, but maybe not quite as delightful.
Still learning experiences, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
I really found that what motivated me and what motivated the people that I really like to work with is a mission. It is to work on something all day long that your skills can be brought to bear for something that really is meaningful. And so when I had the opportunity to become a co-founder of a new startup that was selling hearing aids online, as someone with hearing loss who wears hearing aids, I was like, "Oh my God, please let me do that."
Stars aligned.
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. So that leads us on to, why Jabra Hearing? and the kind of barriers for hearing v sight, and how can design influence for the good?
Yeah. So when I had the opportunity to become co-founder, so we were funded originally by a VC studio, and I had already been super evangelical about hearing aids. So I lost my hearing and all the hearing in my left ear to a thing called sudden hearing loss about 10 years ago. And about a year after I lost my hearing, I really realized what it was like to live with hearing loss, right? I was, you don't know me very well, but I am no wallflower. And I found that I was declining invitations. I was leaving events early because I was frustrated. I couldn't hear, but I was also making mistakes at work. This is when I was at the Amazon subsidiary. Because when you when you have hearing loss, it's not just that you can't hear, it's that you mishear. Your brain is trying to make connections.
Okay, yeah,
And you're making mistakes. And so it seems like you're not as sharp as you were. And
yeah.
so while most
Must be
people
so
experience,
frustrating.
oh my God. And it's really embarrassing.
Right.
You know, when you're really, you know, you feel like you're at the top of your game at work. And when you find that you're losing ground because you can't hear, it's really disappointing. And
Yeah.
because I lost my hearing so quickly, I was super aware and could say, oh, this is 100% a hearing loss problem. Starting to go get hearing aids. And they transformed my life. My life was instantly much better. And I found, like, I was super evangelical. I would tell people all the time, you know, I've had short hair like this my whole life. When I take off my hearing aid, people are so surprised. It's like I took off my leg, right? They don't expect it, because people's perceptions of what hearing aids look like is very, very different than how they really look today. And so when I talk about hearing loss, and people were like, wow, that really worked for you. There were still so many barriers. And I remember speaking with my dad, and he had untreated hearing loss since the 1970s. It was like, oh, Nick, I'm too young for hearing aids. I'm like, you're in your late 60s. What are you talking about? Like, I'm in my 40s.
You're never too young for hearing aids, right?
Right.
That's one of the
Um,
messages.
and that challenge, that stigma, was something that when I had the opportunity to be a co-founder, was something I was so excited, right? Like to help break down those barriers, because there are real barriers that people admit to, right? Like, I won't buy hearing aids because it's too expensive. And, you know, in America, they really are traditionally. Traditional hearing aids go, you know, the average costs about $5,000 for a pair.
Wow.
And they really help people. Hearing aids are, you know, are so beneficial, but the cost can keep people from solving their hearing loss problem.
Okay.
But people they find money for lots of things that they would like to do, much less things that will, you know, dramatically change their life. And I think that what we found with our research is that stigma, that understanding that if I need hearing aids, I'm an old person, is the thing that gets them in the way.
Right.
Gets in the way of that. And I
Yeah.
find that that's the biggest challenge for design, is how do we build a permission structure to help people get over their stigma, get over themselves, and solve their hearing loss problem.
Wow. That is a challenge in itself for sure. And it's not one of the questions you said would mention, but just tell us quickly about the modern day hearing aid, because I was shocked when you told me, right? I mean, you can listen to your music on it, you have your calls on it, right?
Yeah. And when you think about probably your own experience, when you first become aware of hearing aids, you were probably a child, and it was probably an older person that you saw fiddling with their hearing aids. Maybe they were a little bit checked out and kind of not actively engaged in the conversation. You saw this kind of large thing in their ear, and maybe
Yeah.
you even heard feedback, right? And that was probably the last time you ever thought about them, right? And then the next time you're asked to engage with hearing aids, think about hearing aids, is when you might be in the market for it. And so your mental model is grounded in this antiquated vision of the technology and of the people who wear them. And so you think about what design has to do. It's one, make you aware that, holy smoke, the hearing aids of today are nothing like what you remember. I'm going to get a little bit gross and just like take off my hearing aid. So the hearing aids of today are They're powered by Bluetooth.
We like taking on off glasses, right?
Yeah,
No difference.
it's really quite simple. And they so they're powered by Bluetooth. I can stream calls and music directly to the hearing
Amazing.
aids. They're powered by an app. So you know, when I'm having trouble hearing, so like most people, I have trouble hearing and noise. For people who have hearing loss, hearing and noise is a really, really big problem. And so there are programs that an app can provide that allow you to modify your hearing profiles in real time. And so instead of like kind of calling attention to a thing that maybe you don't really want to call attention to, you can just play on your phone like everybody else at the restaurant. Right. And
Fantastic.
so there are, yeah, the technology is just so much more improved.
Yeah.
The form factor is smaller. They're so much more discreet than they are. And so once you kind of make people aware of this, they're like, oh, hearing aids, you know, have come a long way, and maybe there is something that's worth looking at. But
Yeah.
there's still that perception that hearing loss is an old people problem and hearing aids are an old people solution. And so when you talk about the tech, you can help them understand that this is a new solution, right? That they really are modern, like any piece of technology. But that hearing loss is an old people problem is really the thing that, excuse me, is really the thing that we look at as our design mission, right?
Yeah.
How do we help people get over themselves?
Well, I think modern tech and design can help most things, right? Feel younger, that's for sure. But good luck with that. It's a brilliant mission-driven product that's widely needed across the world, right?
Totally. And it's something that I always say we're going to be working on until we all like close our laptops forever. Like, I just think there's so much opportunity to help people.
Yeah. Well, good luck with that. We'll keep watching and certainly keep hearing.
Thank you.
And in terms of, you know, design leadership, what are a few of the lessons you've learned as a design leader?
I think like first and foremost, it's just being a leader, right? So the table stakes of being a leader. So modeling the behavior that you want from your colleagues and your teams, right? Being collaborative and inclusive, having psychological safety, demonstrating a work ethic. You know, if I expect my team to manage up, I need to manage down, right? I need to tell them what I'm working on, where I'm stuck, what things I'm excited about or what I'm feeling blocked on. And I feel like that sort of modeling has really helped develop a cohesive team who are kind of like all marching in the same, rowing in the same direction. And then I think also having a problem solving mindset. I think as you grow and develop from an IC into a leader, you can't just identify a problem. You can't just complain. You do have to identify the issue, but you have to like articulate what is the impact. And you have to come to the table with solutions about like how you would solve that problem. And it doesn't have to be the final, like the end all be all solution, but I think it allows people to understand that that is your responsibility. And that's what we're coming together to do is to solve a problem. And so those are just like table stakes of being, you know, some of the things I think about in being a leader. I think for design leadership, having a point of view, which sounds really obvious, but when I was coming up, I was kind of coached to, you know, they're like, okay, we're gonna do this website, or we're gonna do this poster, or we're gonna, you know, make this website, you know, we're gonna present 3 different approaches. And I was always kind of taught to like present them fairly equally, like, and what I learned is that, especially non-designers, they want the benefit of your expertise and your point of view. They want the benefit of your taste, right? When you're presenting options, you know you have a favorite. Why? What's so great about it? Don't be afraid to celebrate that. That is really what they're paying you for. And then I think the last one is that just as a designer, you're responsible for success, right? And as a design leader, success looks different than it does when you were an IC, right? So you got to make sure that you understand what that means. You know, if you're an IC, your work has to communicate. It has to look great. It has to be easy to use. But if you're like a creative director at an agency or, you know, a chief design officer, you need to cultivate a happy, healthy team that's delivering value, right? Whether that's for the business or for the clients.
Yeah.
You have to make sure that the business or the client is successful and looks successful. You know, whether that's like you're angling for the right resources so that your team can do it efficiently. And so I think it's really just knowing what your responsibility is for success at your level.
Good. That's brilliant. Thank you for that. And last question on our quick fire questions. How do you build a design culture across a diverse design ecosystem?
Yeah, I think that feels different now that so I work at 100% remote company. I always say I did not move to New York to sit in my apartment all day long. I am a people person. And so that's one of the things I've really tried to think about in addition to I have this very diverse team, right? So the team that I'm responsible for, they touch every step of the customer journey, whether it's like marketing for how people discover our offering, the website where they understand what that offering is, to the packaging that the customer receives when they get our hearing aids at home, and then the app that they use to help them hear their best long after they've purchased the hearing aids. That's a really broad team, right? It's
It certainly
marketing,
is.
brand designers, copy. We've got copy under me, product designers. And so when you think about that broad team, plus I got a bunch in New York, I got folks all over the country, and you know, and like half of them are from another country, right? So we have,
Right.
you know, it's not just Americans, and it's not just living in one section of America. It's really it's super, super broad.
Truly diverse. Yeah.
Yeah, and so how do we do that remotely? And so first, I would say as people, we do we started this game that's like called Get to Know a Colleague, where I have like a list of 100 questions. And they are as, you know, they can go really deep of, you know, like what are your hopes and dreams? What was your childhood like to like, what'd you have for breakfast today? And it's an opportunity. We do it like twice a year for the team to just like spend an hour and like chit chat. And so
Yeah.
we don't stick with the script, but you do have to block off that time to make sure that you're engaging as humans and getting to know one another. And then I think for design specifically, our team specifically, there's two things we did. So one was that thing that I mentioned before, which is the design vision and mission, right? So the company mission is to empower people with hearing loss to connect with their world through effortless technology and delightful care. But what can the design team do that is unique to their discipline to deliver on that mission? And it is to rebrand hearing loss and hearing aids. And so when you think about that diverse team, if that's your North Star, it really is quite holistic and something that we can all come to the table to rally against. And then
Certainly is.
the last piece is just leveling guides, right? Which sounds really dry, but when you have a team as broad as this, and we were a startup that was acquired by a larger company, you do as a design leader, you have to think about you know, how do you organize this team and what are the levels? And so we really worked on that as a team, thinking about what are the soft skills, what are the leadership skills that are shared across all the disciplines, right? Whether you are a copywriter or a product designer, what are those kind of like leadership communication skills that you need to do that needs to master that run across all of them? And then we do it differently by discipline, right? What are the skills and techniques that you need to master as a craft, you know, in your craft of design? And so working on those leveling guides, again, together, you know, we're like me and the senior leaders of the design team would kind of like start that process, and then we'd share it out with the team and see how they felt. And to be able to get the different perspectives from different disciplines made the whole thing more cohesive and again, something that everybody had skin in the game for.
I love that. I love that. Nicole, that has been more than 10 minutes, which I wholly expected because it's such a fascinating topic, for sure. And you've been a great guest. I really enjoyed it, and I'm sure I thank all the audience that will watch this in the future as well. Great chat. Thanks for your time, and we'll talk
Thank
again
you so
very
much.
soon.
Yeah, what a pleasure. Thank
Thank
you.
you.